The United States of America versus the People's Republic of China. In this video, we will compare them like they have never been compared before. We will go in depth to investigate which is better in many different aspects, such as demographics, geography, economy and finance, quality of living, infrastructure, and military. So sit back, relax, and we hope you learn something new. Let's kick off this video by taking a look at where both of these nations are located geographically, starting off with the US. The US is a country of 50 states across North America, with Alaska in the northwest and Hawaii extending the nation's presence into the Pacific Ocean. Its capital city is Washington, D.C. And China is a country located in Eastern Asia. Incredibly, it's bordered by 14 other countries. Its capital city is Beijing. So let's start off this comparison with some key demographics, starting off with their population density, and other population fun facts. So as everyone probably already knows, China is the world's most populated country. At the time of making this video, its population stands at around 1.445 billion. The United States is the third most populated country in the world, with around 333 million people. This means that China has more than 1 billion more people than the US. If the US added the entirety of Europe, 746 million, and Indonesia, 273 million, the world's fourth most populated country, it would still be short of China's population. To me, this is seriously mind-boggling. Across the US, the population density is just under 34 people per kilometre squared, compared to China's 151, around 4.5 times more densely populated than the US. The US's three most populated cities by their urban area are New York City with 21 million inhabitants, the 11th highest in the world, Los Angeles with around 15.5 million inhabitants, and finally Chicago with around 9 million. China's three most populated cities by urban area are Shanghai with around 22.1 million, the 8th highest in the world, Guangzhou with around 21.5 million, and finally Beijing with around 19.5 million. This means that the US is home to two megacities. That's a city with more than 10 million residents, and China is home to 6. The US is home to 14 cities with more than 1 million inhabitants, compared to China's astonishing 102. Wow. It must be noted, however, that China's population growth is decreasing, and it is estimated that by around the year 2030, its population will peak, and by the year 2100, its population will have dropped significantly to around 1.065 billion, around a 400 million decrease from today. Over the decades, China's life expectancy has gone through the roof. Today, it stands at around 77 years, the 64th highest in the world, compared to 1980, when it was just 66.4. The US, however, takes the win here at just under 79 years, putting them in a better place than China, but still quite poor, at 46th in the world. In 1980, it was 73.7. The median age in the US is 38.3, and unbelievably China's is 38.4, so we'll class this one as a draw. The fertility rate, or in other words how many children a woman has on average, is 1.699 in China and 1.638 in the US. Again, incredibly close. Mandarin is the most spoken language in China, with around 71.5% of its population speaking it, making it the most spoken language in the world at just under 12% of the world speaking it. And of course, English is the most spoken language in the US at 78%, followed by Spanish at around 13% of the population. Spanish and English are the second and third most spoken languages in the world, respectively. Alright, let's now move on to the geography section. Let's start off by comparing their total land size. To do this, we will hop over to the truesize.com, where we can compare the nations side by side in a non-distorted manner. As you can see, these two countries are coincidentally remarkably similar in terms of land size. The US, however, is slightly larger, so it takes the win here, with the help of Alaska and Hawaii. At 9.8 million squared kilometers and 9.6 million square kilometers, the US and China respectively are the third and fourth largest countries in the world by land size. Now that I can see them side by side, they actually are quite similar in shape too. As previously mentioned, China borders 14 other nations. These are India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Mongolia, Russia, North Korea, Vietnam, Laos, Myanmar, Bhutan and Nepal. Whereas the US only borders Canada and Mexico. It does, however, border Russia as a maritime border in the Bering Sea. That, unsurprisingly, is known as the Russia-United States maritime boundary. When it comes to national parks, the US takes the clear win at a very impressive 423 compared to China's 225. Their most known national parks are Yellowstone in the US and the Zhangjiajie National Forest Park in the Hunan province, which is famously known to have inspired the movie Avatar. Denali, or Mount McKinley, is the tallest point in the US. It is located in Alaska and stands at just under 6,200 meters. Now, slightly controversial, Mount Everest on the crest of the Great Himalayas of Southern Asia is the tallest mountain technically in China. China classes Tibet as an autonomous region of China, so technically Mount Everest is in China, standing at 8,848 meters in the highest point. The United States of America has around 20,000 kilometers of coastline. The coastline borders three major bodies of water: the Pacific Ocean to the west, the Atlantic Ocean to the east, and the Gulf of Mexico to the southeast. China's coastline covers approximately 14,500 kilometers, from the Bohai Gulf in the north to the Gulf of the Tonkin in the south. Its water borders are the East China Sea, the South China Sea, and the Yellow Sea. When it comes to natural disasters, China does take the upper hand here. The main natural disasters that occur in China are typhoons, floods, tsunamis, earthquakes, droughts, and landslides. Compared to the US, which can possibly have tsunamis, volcanoes, earthquakes, hurricanes along the Atlantic and Gulf of Mexico coast, tornadoes in the Midwest and Southeast, mudslides in California, forest fires in the west, flooding and permafrost in northern Alaska. Due to its large size and wide range of geographic features, the United States contains examples of nearly every global climate. The climate is subtropical in the southern United States, tropical in Hawaii and southern Florida, polar in Alaska, semi-arid in the Great Plains west of the 100th meridian, Mediterranean in coastal California, and arid in the Great Basin and the southwest. And again, China is just as big as the US, so its climate is diverse as well. It ranges from tropical in the south to subarctic in the north. For me, this is a win for the US. It literally has every climate imaginable on Earth. Alright, now time for economic and financial statistics and facts. This should be interesting. Let's kick off this section by looking at the biggest, juiciest number, the total GDP for these two nations. In 1970, China's GDP was just 92 billion US dollars, compared to the US's 1 trillion, over 10 times higher. By the year 2000, China's GDP had reached 1.2 trillion, and the US's was over 10 trillion, again, not far from being 10 times higher. At the time of making this video, the International Monetary Fund estimates that the US's total GDP is 22.6 trillion US dollars, a mouth-watering figure. This makes the US the richest country on Earth. And then with just under 16.7 trillion US dollars, China comes in as the second richest country on Earth by GDP. For reference, Japan comes in third with just under 5.4 trillion. It is estimated that by around the year 2032, China will overtake the US as the largest economy on Earth. Now, this next one isn't even close. The US wipes the floor with China in terms of GDP per capita. At around $68,300, the US has the fifth highest GDP per capita in the world. Behind only Luxembourg, Switzerland, Ireland and Norway, China, however, sits in 61st place with just under 12,000 US dollars. There are of course many wealthy individuals in China, but with a population of over 1.4 billion, there are still a lot of poor residents. Speaking of wealthy people, let's take a look at how many billionaires these two nations have. So to no surprise, the US takes the win here, not just in this battle, but for the entire world. With 724 billionaires at a rate of 1.85 per million people, compared to China's 698 at a much lower rate of 0.27 billionaires per 1 million people. The US's labour force by occupation is as follows: agriculture 1%, industry 19%, and services 80%, which is rather different to China's. Agriculture just under 8%, industry 40.5%, and services 52%. Now, if you are American, you are not going to want to miss this next one. Let's take a look at the largest companies in the world by market cap. So 7 of the top 10 highest market cap companies in the world are American, with the likes of Apple, Amazon, Google, and Tesla. Tencent, China's equivalent of Facebook, is the only Chinese company to make the top 10 list. Okay, cool, time for the next section, quality of life. Let's fire through some quick stats. When it comes to the Global Happiness Index, the US takes the easiest win of their life, ranking 18th in the world compared to China's 94th place. When it comes to the Global Peace Index, however, both of these countries, well, suck. China sits in 110th place. Yes, you heard that right. And the US sits in 128th place. Very poor. It's pretty much impossible to be 2 of the biggest countries in the world by size, population, economy, and military, and not be involved in political instability. So this one comes to no surprise. Let's now move on to the Global Corruption Index, where the US positions itself in a more respectable place, 31st in the world compared to China's 140th place. And finally, let's end this section by looking at the Human Development Index. The index considers the health, education, and income in a given country to provide a measure of human development which is comparable against other countries over time. The US sits in a very decent 17th place, notably falling 3 places from the previous year, compared to China, who sits in 85th place, but impressively climbed 12 places compared to the previous year. Alright, let's now move on to the penultimate section, infrastructure. Starting off with how much roadways, railways, and airports these 2 countries have. At just under 6.6 million kilometers, the US just beats China's 4.8 million kilometers of roadway. However, it must be noted that China used more concrete between 2011 and 2014 than the US did in the entirety of the 20th century. The US again takes the win when it comes to railways, with around 293,000 kilometers compared to China's 131,000. This next one is mental. So China has around 200 public airports that travelers can use. The US has a mind-boggling 5,200, a clear win for the United States. One World Trade Center in New York City is the United States' tallest building, standing at 541 meters tall. Now, if you thought that was tall, which of course it is, then check out the Shanghai Tower in, of course, Shanghai, which is even taller at 632 meters, making it the 2nd tallest building in the world, only behind the Burj Khalifa. However, when it comes to the world's largest building by volume, the US takes the win with the Boeing factory in Washington. It has a floor area of just under 13.3 million meters cubed. By floor space, however, the New Century Global Center in Chengdu is the world's largest building. It has just under 19 million square feet of floor space. And finally, let's compare their biggest sports stadiums, and it's another clear win for the United States. The Michigan Stadium has a capacity of over 107,000 people, making it the 3rd largest stadium by capacity in the world. China doesn't even come close. Their largest is around 80,000, the Guangdong Olympic Stadium. The majority of the world's highest capacity stadiums are in fact located in the US. And finally, to end the video, let's compare their military strength and spending. So China ranks as the 3rd most powerful military in the world, behind Russia and above India. Then we have the US with the most powerful military on Earth. In 2020, the US spent an incredible $778 billion on its military, around 3.4% of their total GDP. However, China spent around $252 billion, the second highest in the world, so around about a third of what the US spent. China, however, does win when it comes to military personnel numbers, with the most in the world at just under 2.2 million. The US sits behind India as the third highest in the world, with 1.4 million. So there we have it, the US versus China. From these comparisons, it's quite clear that the US is still dominant in many aspects. However, China is catching up, and the next couple of decades will seriously be interesting. Let us know in the comment section below what your thoughts on China versus the US is and how you see the future playing out. Thank you so much for watching, we really hope you enjoyed. Remember to drop a like if you enjoyed and drop a sub if you haven't already. Have a great day, and we will see you very soon in the next video.